Is it time to change your approach and switch to Air Supra, albuterol budesonide? Now you can virtually connect with a doctor to discuss your options and see if it's time to make a change. If appropriate, you may even be able to get a prescription for Air Supra the same day. Talk to a doctor today and see if Air Supra is right for you. Visit AirSupraConnect.com to connect with a provider.
This episode is brought to you by Mug Root Beer. It's 3 p.m. on a Thursday. Too late for a coffee, too early for a beer. So you walk around aimlessly in search of a mysterious third beverage. That's when you hear it. The sound of the dog. The sound of Mug Root Beer. So drink Mug Root Beer if you got that dog in you.
Hi, and welcome to IKEA. How can I help?
Oh, my schedule is crazy. I just want some me time.
Maybe it's time to embrace the joy of staying in. With comfortable beds, pillow and decor, mood lighting, and so much more, you can turn your bedroom into the place to be.
Oh, sounds like a dream.
We've got you. Visit us in-store or at ikea-usa.com/sleep to create your dream bedroom today.
Carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
And welcome back to Micro Queers. It's our sporadic queer horror movie roundup, and I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we are discussing the Tubi original Killer Body Count, directed by Danishka Esterhazy, the director of the Slumber Party Massacre remake.
Yes, not gonna lie, went in with some high expectations because of that fact.
I did too, so I guess, let's answer the questions, Joe. Would you recommend this movie?
This is going to be a soft recommend. I had a certain amount of fun with it, but I will come swinging out of the gates. This is a little too long and a little too slight.
I agree with you. I wound up giving this a 3-star rating.
Yeah.
It might be more of a 2.5, but I agree with you. Y'all, this movie is 10 minutes shy of 2 hours. Does not need to be.
No.
I see a lot of sparks of like the I don't want to say genius, but like the good things that made Slumber Party Massacre such a success for me. And
yes,
I think a lot of the like the thematic through lines with, feminism and like objectifying male bodies is like carrying over from that film into this one. But
yes,
yeah. I do I do think it is a better version of they/them, but
I was wondering how long it was going to take you to get to that one.
I mean, here's the thing, because and this is the second film I've seen this week that involves this kind of like conversion or aversion therapy, like what have you. I still feel like we haven't cracked the code on how to do a really good one of these movies yet. But yeah, I think if this was about 25 minutes shorter, this would be a lot better in my eyes. And I don't want to pin it all just on the long length, but y'all, this is a nearly 2-hour slasher movie that doesn't need to be this long.
Yeah, I'm going to place some of the blame on Jessica Landry. That's the screenwriter for this film. And I think, as you said, parts of it are great. I do think Esterhazy is bringing some great visuals, not just in the boy candy, but also, there's some fun gore moments in here. I think we've got at least one death that could be in contention for best death at the Hereditaries.
Is this the slice down the gut?
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, I really like. He's holding his dick the whole time. It's fantastic.
He is very funny. But yeah, the screenplay, you're right. It's just, this story is somehow harder to crack than we expected, which is funny because I've seen quite a few films now. I've read a couple of different like YA thrillers that address this, and most of them are fine. A lot of them have really interesting or intriguing ideas, or they've got moments that really shine. But overall, none of them are slam dunks. And I don't know what it is. It's like we can't crack this code.
I think, too, I keep expecting some kind of surprise, like a narrative surprise in any of these films. And it's also, I don't get that with this. Like, I think that the finale of this movie is kind of a dud. And that's
oh, yeah. It's a big old whimper to the finish.
Right? And honestly, like, it brought me back to Maxine, where it's like, oh, of course that guy's the killer. But it's also just like, I don't know. I was expecting just something a little bit innovative, and that wasn't here in this movie. It was more so just the premise itself was the innovation.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Well, okay, so how about this? So with treatment center horror, like, how do you like this more than They/Them?
I do. I mean, you and I didn't have the same kind of reaction to some of the characters. Like, people found that movie very dumb, occasionally offensive. They really didn't like the pink sequence. Folks, we've got a whole long episode on it if you want to go and listen on Patreon.
Yeah.
But I like these characters, particularly Cammy, our lead, who is played by Cassiel Etok-Winnick. I just didn't always get the depth from them. Like, we are missing a lot of characterization, particularly in the other girls. And then the guys are almost non-existent, which I think is fine because this film is so inherently feminist.
I agree with you. I thought the exact same thing. So I like a lot of these girls that we have. But yeah, outside of Wyatt, who is played by Savannah Tardillo, I don't think any of them, like, they're not actual characters. I love that we are, have a lot of people of color in the cast, but I also agree with you about the men, where I couldn't figure out the names of the male characters until after they died, and I think it's intentional.
Yeah, so we've got this one male lead, Daniel, who is played by Brett Kruger, and he's the eye candy. I love Wyatt's description of him as Jesus if Jesus drank kombucha. Hilarious.
We go back to that well a lot, but it never stopped being funny.
Truly, yes. And even like the slow motion shots of him when he takes off his top, and you're just like, yeah, okay, I can see it actually. We get a little bit from him, but even he as the predominant male lead of this film, can I tell you more than the fact that, he's here, he's banged like 30 girls, and he sometimes seems nice, but maybe isn't?
The characters that left out to me the most, obviously, yes, Cammy is the lead, Wyatt, but I really liked, quote-unquote, Tawny, played by Alex McGregor, and she is the sister of the brother-sister duo who run this camp. And I should point out, it's not like a conversion, it's a rehabilitation for
sex addicts.
Well, but it's not even sex addicts, it's just teenagers who want to have sex.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the funniest jokes in this, right? Cammy is sent down to this camp. We learned that it is down south, which of course it would be. And she's sent there by her father, Brian, who is played by Colin Moss. And it's not even like she has a problem. He and the father, Tim, who is, spoiler alert, eventually revealed to be the mastermind behind this entire camp, is committing most of the murders along with Tawny and the other parents. It's super funny that they basically treat her like she is a sex addict, and it's like she wanted to fuck some guy. Like, yeah, that's her thing. Yeah,
great. It's just innocent teenage desires, right? But we're living in a really religious time. So I thought all of the setup was really, really, really good. It's just once we get to the camp, we meet all the campers. And there's actually a bit more of a straight-laced, but I'm a cheerleader in this movie, I think, too. I feel like I would compare it more to that film than I would They/Them, although they all kind of share the same DNA.
Yeah, no, I can see that, because even some of the interactions, there is a little bit of playful comedy. I either could have done with more of it or less of it. It's somewhere in the middle, and I think it's confusing some of the tone.
I agree, and I think that's also where the runtime is coming into play, because I think there are, when we are making jokes, they are funny, but there's also like long stretches without jokes that I was like, wait, like there is a tonal imbalance here. We also get incest in this movie, which doesn't...
Yes, we do.
It doesn't really... Okay, I wanted this to be addressed more by the involved parties, didn't you?
Yeah, so we are hinting very early that Tawny and her brother Eugene, who is played by Bjorn Steinbeck, are a little too close. And then there's a story that comes out that they've both been involved in some kind of trauma, seeing their uncle murder most of the people in the camp, decades ago. And that is eventually revealed to be false, and these two are just religious fanatics, and Tawny is a killer, Eugene is not. But there is straight up a moment where we get to see these two having upright sex against a hanging bear rug.
Yeah.
It is hilarious. The visual is ridiculous, but everybody's just kind of like, ew. And then we move on as though we didn't just experience incest.
Well, the fact that Tawny is never taken to task for this and this hypocrisy, because again, Tawny is like the really religious one, like the hateful religious bigot of the group. Yeah. And her dad is revealed to be the mastermind at the end, which, like, he calls her like an abomination, and I'm assuming it's because he knows his 2 children are fucking, but like, we never get that reaction from her, which we never know like, how she feels about all this. Or again, like, why doesn't Cammy ever say, why are you fucking your brother?
Yeah, like, I needed a bigger moment. I mean, it's a very you response, right? We wanted people who have been wrong to stand up and be like, fuck you, fuck your hypocrisy. You know, there's this moment at the end where Cammy's dad almost gets a redemption arc where instead of going after her like some of the other parents have, he decides to kill himself instead. And I was just like, no, you didn't earn this moment. Like, fuck you. We saw the videotape where you consented to them doing whatever they wanted to quote unquote cure your daughter. Fuck you.
Oh, and I actually really do like that moment a lot. It felt like one of the more grounded moments in a film that I do think is a little ridiculous. But I gotta say, Edith Winnick, I really like her. I mean, she carries a lot of this film.
Yeah, and you said this earlier where you appreciated that there was diverse casting. One of the things I really enjoyed about Cassiel, Edith Winnick, is that she's not like wafer thin. I'm not going to pretend like, oh my God, she's plus size or anything. She's a regular girl. Like, she's not a 0 or a 2 or something like that. She's, you know, got a little bit of meat on them bones. And I love that no one comments on it. Everybody thinks she's hot. The other thing I really enjoyed about this film, Trace, everybody is down to play. And I get that, yeah, they're all kind of here because they're maybe engaging in sex and the parents don't like it. But there are numerous occasions where it's like, you know, boys walking in on boys making out with girls, and everybody's just like, cool. There's a moment where there's at least 5 people in a room and one guy goes, I wasn't expecting this, but I guess I'm down for it.
Okay, but like even the scene where, so all the boys are like showering in the shower room together, and then one of them just goes to the other one, hey man, do you want to lather me up? Yeah, sure. Like, it's definitely played for laughs, but it's like, it's not in the making fun of the queerness laugh. It's more so like, I can't believe it's not something you're used to, right? Like this kind of nonchalance about naked men sudsing each other up in a non-sexual way.
Yeah, like, I put in my notes that it feels as though everybody is kind of pansexual because they're all just so horny that they are willing to fuck anybody, and everyone here is very attractive, so it makes sense. But you're right, it's not a joke at the character's expense or at the expense of their sexuality. It's more a joke at the audience expectation that men would be turned off by being sexually active with each other.
Yes, and I think that's an Esterhazy trademark by this point. Like, I agree. Because it was very similar in Slumber. I keep wanting to say Sleepaway Camp. It was very similar in Slumber Party Massacre. And so if that's a through line that she takes through all of her films, like, that's great. I would love to see what she can do with a budget.
Yeah, because this movie is, I mean, it's a Tubi original, so we've got that shallower, less shiny look to it. It just doesn't have the same kind of shiny look to it that we have seen with films with bigger budgets. I will say, yeah, you know, she loves to play around in a campground. She loves to feature extended montages of boys half naked and showering.
Just butts out.
Just butts out. And I'm here for it.
I am too. But how about some of these kills, though? So I feel like the kills are too spread out. And, well, until they're not. Then we just get a bunch in, like, the last act of the movie.
To the point where it almost feels like they don't matter anymore, though. Like, considering how many down stretches there are, I would have actually preferred that we spread the love a little bit. Like, when the hammer starts to drop and we're killing people, we could kill people a little bit faster so that we're not saving everybody at the end.
Well, and there's a kind of an interesting, like, remark they make where it's like, oh, it seems like the killer's only killing people who get off, which is why the boys are getting killed first. Because there's a whole through line about how, you know, oh, the boys aren't getting the girls off. They're not having orgasms.
Because the boys seem to be really bad at sex, even though they're at this camp for people who have a lot of sex.
Right, but then that motive, for lack of a better term, kind of isn't what's actually going on.
It's a red herring. Yeah,
it's a red herring. But I mean, nevertheless, if they're fucking, they're gonna get killed. But we prioritize the boys first, and then I think that actually does a disservice to the girls who get killed in the last act because they just get killed so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that doesn't really work with me is that we do have, we have Wyatt, who's a woman of color, but she's quite distinct looking. Like, I would argue that Tardia, she's got great chemistry with Cassie, and they've got some tender moments, and obviously they are intended to be the final couple. Like, it's pretty obvious right from the go that Cammy is gonna, get down with Wyatt. But then we've got these two other girls. So we've got Allie, who is played by Kosha Nagami, and she's the storyteller of the group, for lack of a better term. So she's the one who tells them about the urban legend, about Tawny and Eugene, and all this other stuff. But that's kind of her only defining trait. And then there's Mia, who is played by Nikoni Memtaja, and the only defining trait that I could really find with Mia is that she's the girl who fucks two guys in the time that we know her. Like, that is not a character trait.
Okay, but like, tell me, who is less like of a character, Allie or this blonde girl Bree, played by Jessica Daipiven? Who she does get a really funny moment when they're trying to like distract everyone, and so she's like, "Oh wait, I'm holding the knife. Look at me!" Like, there's some funny stuff like that, but it doesn't like, oh, we need to kill this girl, like, or one of these girls way earlier in the film.
Yeah, because initially I thought, maybe we're only going to kill the boys, and that's part of the film's not-so-subtle feminist agenda, and then we do start to kill the girls, and I honestly got a little bit disappointed, because I agree with you then, we should have maybe just been killing more of these people earlier, because I wonder too if it's a bit of a budget thing, because the deaths that we do get are reasonably good. So we'll go into those in a bit more detail in a moment, but it feels like maybe we only had budget for 3 reasonably big deaths, and then everything else was like, we can get away with sort of cutting away from it.
I guess, but see, I agree with you. Once the girl started dying, I was kind of like, then like, what is the end of, like, who is the killer going to be? Because I was thinking, maybe the killer is going to be a woman who's like doing some kind of like, not the, we're killing all the people who are having sex type thing. I was hoping that wasn't going to be the motive for this killer, and that it just is that it's Tawny and Eugene's priest dad who is the mastermind, and Tawny is like in on it, but it was so underwhelming to me. I was like, it's just that. Like, we spent 2 hours on this.
Yeah, it's exactly what you expect it to be, which wouldn't be an issue, I think, if we didn't try to suggest that it was something completely different. Like, if we hadn't introduced it's because people are getting off, or made us think, okay, there's something more nefarious going on, because there's this whole underground cabal. Like, there's more than one killer. Yep. We've got security cameras. The fences are electrified. Our phones have been burned. And you think, this is going conspiracy level shit. And then it kind of is, but it's for the exact reason you think it is. Just the parents are like, well, if our kids can't be cured, quote unquote, of their sexual proclivities, then I guess we might as well kill them.
Well, it's kill them before they have a chance to like damn themselves even further into hell. So I think what they're trying to do is, kill them so they can get to heaven before they sin enough to go to hell. And that is an interesting concept, but it can't sustain a 110-minute long movie.
Well, this movie's not really interrogating that either.
No.
Like, the religion is a little bit facile.
It's a lot of surface level stuff. And I think that's the thing is, like, with these types of movies, I'm just waiting for something that's a little bit subversive, and we're not really getting. I mean, look, I think like conversion therapy camps or something like this, anti-sex camps there is horror to be found in there, but it's either something that's just really basic and surface level like this, or they/them, or it's something that's like more of a drama that just like the horror comes from like what it is, but it's not really something I would call a horror movie.
Okay, so question for you, and this is maybe a little bit challenging because we don't want to be insensitive. I sort of feel like when we do this conversion or aversion therapy, we send people to camp or whatever, it feels like we never go quite hard enough. Like, people are afraid of actually documenting how horrific the treatment is. Because even in this, it feels like, okay, well, they've just gone to summer camp and had their phones taken away from them, and then they have to spend some time in the chapel. Like, even when Cammy is made to fall on her knees on rocks and we see that her legs are bleeding, that's as hard as it gets for these kids. And part of me was like, I kind of feel like I need to see them suffer to understand why it's so bad.
Well, and here's the thing. I agree with you completely, and it seems like we're really afraid to go there. I think the best modern example of this type of thing...
Did not say Boy Erased.
No. It's American Horror Story Asylum.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying that's like the best thing ever. I mean, it's the best season of American Horror Story. But like, I think that does like the aversion therapy stuff. Like it showcases it the best. I guess you could maybe argue it's a bit gratuitous, but again, that to me is like, you're showing the horror. Like, I think it's important to see some of this stuff. And yeah, we don't get that here unless just them getting killed. That's the big punishment. But like,
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some of these deaths. So the big early one is Rob, who is played by Ethan Saunders. So he has sex with Mia, and then Mia leaves because she is dissatisfied. And we get to see this guy nearly fully naked, like fully naked from behind. And then, yes, he is left holding his junk as the devil mask killer just comes up and goes from chin to groin.
Okay, but you say just comes up. He spends a good 30 seconds walking towards Rob while Rob just stares at him like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing?
Well, it's because he thinks that this is Chris, who is played by Nahum Hughes. And so I think he thinks he's about to maybe have sex again.
You know what? Maybe you're right. Because Chris was the MVP of the looks department for me.
Well, for sure. He's definitely the most conventionally good-looking one, but he's also the one that everyone references as either some kind of prankster or the one who is most likely to fuck you, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, but you know what? He does get to get Mia off before he dies.
Yeah, so after Rob is killed, the next big death is... Well, first we have Toby. Who is played by Thynes Viljan. And this one I found a little bit underwhelming. Yeah. It seemed like we didn't have quite the same budget for it. Like, some of it is, something happens off screen and then we just cut to the actor with the prosthetic attached. But so in this case, he gets speared in a confessional. But
it is kind of funny, though, because he apparently keeps a porno magazine in the confessional. And so we get a full masturbation scene and then a shot of his hand covered in cum that he then wipes on the curtain of the confessional booth.
Also, I have to say, I mean, I know that some people are shooters and some people are volume and so on, but like, this was the wettest looking I think I've ever seen.
Oh my god, it's so funny because I just rewatched Gregor Rak's Doom Generation recently, and there's a whole scene with Jonathan Sheck, where he comes, but like the cum on his hand is like the chunkiest cum I have ever seen.
Oh boy, folks, get in touch. No, I was
just drink more water.
What was I about to ask for? Like, do not send us pictures of your cum, but I guess cum shots in film, hilarious to me every time,
right? Because it's not real. Well, maybe it is real cum. Who knows? But I doubt
it. Of course it's not real, Trace.
Anyway, so yeah, Chris eats out Mia. She gets off. She leaves, and then he gets. It's a kind of fun little chase scene through this locker room, but I don't think it's like necessarily that suspenseful. He goes to hide a shower or whatever. But we get this great Achilles heel slice, and then just his head is smashed. And I thought this was actually done pretty well.
Yeah, so this is done with a dumbbell in the gym, which I guess adjoins the locker. Sure. But I like this because it's not just, I drop it on your head and then we see a pulverized mess or something. Like, we're actually quite far away. So we're just seeing, and this is not CGI. So this is the other reason it really worked for me. We're seeing practical blood spray multiple times because we're lifting the weight back up and dropping it down again.
And honestly, these are the best deaths. Like, I couldn't even tell you how Bree dies. I know, Allie gets the frankincense holder in her head, which the aftermath looked cool, but it was very much one of those things where we the shot is shown throwing it, and then we cut, and then it's just in her head all of a sudden,
Yeah, and it's almost the same with Daniel. So we for a moment think that maybe Daniel is in on it or he can't be trusted, and then he just gets impaled by the same spear as Toby.
Oh, that pissed me off. That is the same weapon? Like, no, movie, don't do that.
It's also just really underwhelming because I think it was meant to be shock value because we don't expect him to either die or die so early. But yeah, it's a bit of an underwhelming death. And I wanted more for that character or for Cammy to be able to process it because she was wrong about him.
Yeah, absolutely. But we don't have time for that because we got to rush into this fucking ending with this mass or whatever they're doing. But it's just there to kill all of them. And also, I thought it was weird that Cammy's dad is the only parent that's there.
Well, and we barely identified the other parents. So even though there's all of these other folks who are hanging out, it doesn't have any of the impact because none of these other people are identifiable. So it just feels like, Tawny and a bunch of her friends in robes.
Yeah. Well, like, Tawny is kind of set up as the major antagonist of the film. So for her to be so easily dispatched by Father Tim, her dad, who, have we seen him before this or have we just heard about him before this?
He's in the church that Cammy goes to at the beginning.
Oh, right. Okay, well.
But also, does that mean that he just goes around the country looking for promiscuous teens to send to this camp? Or, like,
sure,
he specifically sought out camp? Like, it was too personal to the point where I thought, no, why not just make it this nefarious religious group instead of trying to tie it back to someone we know like it's a reveal?
Yeah, none of that was done very well. I think you're right, though. A lot of that is a fault of the screenplay, but yeah, I was just expecting a little bit something more with the resolution of this film, and it's just kind of like, I mean, it's kind of cool, you know, because after all is said and done, we basically have the girl from the prologue, which is revealed to, I guess, be taking place after the rest of the movie, but it's
like are there different, because I think what we're meant to believe is that theirs is actually only one part of camp, or that there's adjoining camps.
Yeah, because there's Sodom, Gomorrah, and we're getting so much Whore of Babylon stuff in this movie too, which didn't we just talk about that in the movie too?
Oh, probably. But I mean, I will say it pays off. I don't think it pays off in terms of like, oh, that character you thought was dead in the prologue actually is still alive and we're secretly doing a wraparound. But I did like seeing all of our surviving members, including Eugene, who turns out to be a good guy, identifying themselves as the whores of Babylon and then just going into battle. I was like, you know what? That's a pretty good way to end the movie.
I think so too. To the point where if we get a sequel of them just like going around killing a bunch of religious zealots, I'm okay. I don't think we're going to get it, but I would totally watch that.
Which to me is maybe, we can't quite make this conversion therapy horror stick. So maybe it needs to be the post-conversion therapy. That's because we talked about this, I think, in They Slash Them too, where it's almost like, let's not do that. Let's do the aftermath story.
Yeah, it's a thing where it's like we're so focused on making the people who are obviously already the villains, like they are the villains, and it's like I get it, but like I just need something more than I need something to be subversive, and nothing about this is particularly subversive, with the exception of the gender politics.
Yeah. Either that or just don't try to pretend like there's a surprise or a reveal at the end of this. Like, don't make it a whodunit because, yeah, we already know who the fucking villains are. Like, even if you want to pretend like Eugene's not a bad guy, he's still been hurting these kids at this fucking outdated, outmoded camp.
I think if you remove the whodunit aspect, that would fix some of this stuff for me. So, yeah, whoever's doing this next, take a crack at it.
There we go.
All right, everyone. Well, that is Killer Body Count, now streaming on Tubi, possibly exclusively. I would assume Tubi original.
I think so.
Yeah, why not? But yeah, give it. I mean, again, I've seen worse. I do think it's better than They Slash Them. It's just like it's not a perfect film, but you know, you can do worse on a Friday night.
Yeah, if for no other reason, if you want to see surprisingly progressive sexual politics in terms of the characters who don't suck, and also some boy butts.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what Esterhazy does next, because I just hope someone sees this and gives her money.
Honestly, just a couple of million, please.
A couple of million. All right, everyone. Well, until next time, we can cross out Killer Body Count.
Indeed, and cross out microqueers.